So I have my ChatGPT open here. I'm using the Plus version, which is paid. It's $20 a month, but everything else is for free. And we're using the latest GPT-4. We'll see how quickly this video gets outdated. Hopefully pretty fast. So first of all, I'm going to ask it. Actually, I don't even know what the structure of the book should be. I'm not an author, so let's find out. On average, how many chapters are there in a non-fiction bestseller book in the category of technology / mental health? Two very different categories, but let's see what it asks, what it tells us. As it writes over here, I have a document. I'm going to copy paste everything that GPT says in here, and then this will be actually our doc for writing the book. So no specific number, not fiction, blah, blah. Fiction, I have 10 to 20 chapters. Okay, so that's what we want the structure to be. Let's keep it simple, be humble. 10 chapters in the book. Chapters. How many paragraphs per chapter? And so I'll say probably there's no specific number, blah, 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 but hopefully it'll give me a range. That's what we're trying to get to over here. So the average number of paragraphs, blah, blah. On average, how many paragraphs per chapter? Okay, give me a rough estimate. 10 to 30 paragraphs, perfect. So again, keep it simple. 10 paragraphs, that's what we're aiming for. And then on average, how many words per paragraph? It's pretty hesitant to give me exact numbers. And of course it does vary a lot, but I just want to get the averages. So again, keeping it simple, 50 words. That's what we're going to go for. 50 words per paragraph. So this is what we want the book look like. Now, okay, thank you. I'm going to stop generating. So, thanks. I don't know why, but I feel like I should be polite to it. So I say things like, thank you. Thanks. Now, give me a title for this book idea. How ChatGPT using GPT-4 and other large language models are changing, or let's improving. Changing and improving. We want both the positive and the negative. Improving the mental health industry, specifically how therapy is changing and how digital tools are affecting our digital mental health tools are affecting our well-being. So this is the rough idea for the book that I just came up with. Let's see what title give me. Ooh, it's good. It's good. Very good. I like it. So this is the title of the book. Title of the book. Title. That's the format. And now we want the outline. There's 10 paragraphs. Okay. Now give me an outline of 10 chapters. 10 chapters for the book. And so it does these sub paragraphs, which is interesting. So it's doing 10 chapters and then 3 sub chapters per chapter. I didn't ask it to do it. It's doing it on its own. So actually what I'll ask it to write 5 paragraphs for each sub chapter. That way we'll have 15 paragraphs. And I'm also going to ask it to write 1 introduction paragraph for each chapter. I think that'll be a good format. So let's check if it's giving me correct information, or what seems to be correct. So all of this actually looks really good. The chapters make sense. It's starting with introduction and talking about what is the current landscape, and then moving into what the tools are, personalization, the benefits, ethics, very important chapter, the collaboration, evaluating effects, vision the future. So overall, I'd say the structure looks actually really good. Again, 3 sub chapters for each chapter. So it's giving me a very nice format to work with. I'm just going to copy paste all of this. And this will be the outline for our book. So let me toss that in here. Great. Write an introductory paragraph for chapter 1. Perfect. Afterwards, I'll ask you to write the rest of the chapter. So I just wanted to give you the paragraph, not the whole thing. So I say afterwards, I'll do that. So let's say if it understands what I'm trying to get it to. And as it's writing this, I'm going to read it and correct it and make sure that everything is okay. Of course, normally you wouldn't just copy paste everything. You would actually co-create this. So I didn't tell it to limit the paragraph to 50 words. This is more than 50. I can already tell. But it actually looks really good. And maybe having a bit more won't hurt. Who knows? So this is how many words? It's 100 words. Okay, so we're going to have more than the average 50 words. But that is okay with me. And so we will now, the following 5 paragraphs. Now write the 5 paragraphs for. So I'm asking it to write 5 paragraphs, and it's numbering the paragraphs. We're not going to use this numbering in the actual book, but it's good information for me to see how many paragraphs we have. So we wrote 5 paragraphs. That makes sense. It's actually, I would say, I'm no writer, but I'd say this is pretty good writing. As a reader, I would actually think this is interesting. Now let's see, how many words are there in total? 400 words in 5 paragraphs. All right, so it wrote a little bit less than 100 words per paragraph. So this will actually give us some really good volume of content. At the end, I'll do all the formatting and take care of all of that stuff. But for now, let's keep going. Great, now give me 5 paragraphs for historical context and development. Here we go. I guess the biggest problem with this, it's similar to what pilots have, is the pilot's gonna just sit there and autopilot does most of the work, so it's boring for most of the flight. I think most of the job is just for me reading what it writes. Obviously, if you're publishing a book, you would actually do the editing and be a lot more creative work. This is kind of just showcase of what is possible. But most of the time, I'm just going to sit back and read what it writes. It's actually a really good way to learn about a topic as well. If you can't find a book on a topic, well, hey, you can just make one. So does that give me history here and talking about milestones in the evolution of the LLMs. We're gonna double check the facts. We're gonna fact check just in case it's not giving me random answers and making things up. But here we go, the next 5 paragraphs on the historical context. Very good. And now GPT-4 and its significance. Give me 5 paragraphs on. I guess we could introduce a little bit of variety as well. So, ask it to 3 paragraphs, ask it for examples, ask it for other stuff. We're going to try that out as well. I think in some of the later chapters, the current state of mental health or talking about the specific tools, I want to ask it examples and potential, real life samples. There is some repetition. So it says that, impressive capability is the sheer scale. Now, it has already said that specific sentence. Yeah, so here it already said one of the key factors in impressive capability of GPT-4 is its sheer scale. So this was in this paragraph, and we also saw it We also saw it in the introduction to ChatGPT chapter. One of the factors is sheer scale at which the models are trained. It's pretty much the same sentence. All right, so that's our first chapter finished. We've got, let's see how many. We've got 3 sub-chapters. And in total, we wrote 1,300 words. So if we do 10 chapters like this, 1,300 words. That's good volume. So moving on, chapter 2. We're going to do the same format. I'll ask you to write introductory paragraph, and then I'll ask you to write 5 sub-paragraphs for each of these. So it says that in this chapter, we'll explore the current state of mental health care, the limitations and challenges that persist of technology in shaping the future of mental health treatment. So it says that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to double check if it actually writes about that. I wonder if it can anticipate what it's going to write. That's interesting. So I'll give it more context. We have 3 sub chapters. Now write 5 paragraphs for the first subchapter of, because I wanted to understand the whole process. I don't know if it does. So I'm going to tell it that we have these 3, and hopefully if I say the first 5 for this one, it'll understand that we're going to do the next 3, or maybe you can anticipate, even though it has created the outline itself, but I don't know if you can keep all of that in the back of the mind. It's actually really good thinking. It talks about how integrating mental health care into the primary care has created more access. However, there are challenges with sufficient training. So this is true. It makes sense. This is actually very true. The biggest problem is the shortage of mental health professionals. There are about 106,000 registered mental health professionals, but millions and tens of millions of people are seeking help. Interestingly, it only wrote 3 paragraphs for, so I made a mistake. I asked it to write 3 paragraphs and it did. Well, I guess we'll only have 3 paragraphs for this subchapter instead of 5. Mistake was human. So we're going to change the style here. Now I'm going to ask it to, instead of telling it to write the 5 paragraphs for the subsection, I'll just say, now write the sub or the section called, because earlier I told it what chapter we're on, and then there are 3 sections or subsections, I called them. Okay. And so now I'm going to ask, right, call this, so I call it a subsection. So let's stick something called 2, blah, blah, with some examples. So I'm not going to tell it to write the 5 paragraphs. I'll just ask for examples. And so let's see what it's going to come up with. So you can see it's automatically including the examples already. So it's basing the entire chapter on the examples. I ask for some examples. And so I don't know how many paragraphs it's going to write me. In the past, I told it to give me 5 paragraphs. So I'm going to see if it's going to stick to the 5 paragraph setup, and if it will use examples as the actual paragraphs. Ideally, I would like it to write the 5 paragraphs and include some examples, not just the examples. But of course, I would have to say it that more specifically, I guess. So overviewing what it wrote so far, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs with the example. So it's got introduction paragraph, 4 examples, and then kind of a conclusion. So this is the setup that it's using, which is actually very interesting. So I'm going to copy paste this. Now I've been continuously writing, so we're now at chapter 6. So this is learning and adapting over time. So yeah, we're finishing chapter 5 actually. In the meantime, I'll just continue writing because it's mostly just copy paste. So I will keep you updated on the progress. And now I'm going to ask it to write the final subsection. So I'll just say, write the final subsection of this chapter And I'm putting the name in there. And let's see, I'm not asking for examples. So we're going to see if it uses examples and how many paragraphs it comes up with. Just to summarize, if I look at all of the words, we have 6,000 words right now. Took us half an hour to write half the book. So right here, I've asked it to just write the subsection, and it's using the same boilerplate of introduction paragraph, example. It's probably gonna, it looks like it's gonna do the 4 examples and then the final, which is interesting. I told it to use examples once, and now it's only using the examples, which I don't want. So I guess I'll have to, in the next chapter, I have to tell it to stop reusing the example template. So I'm going to try out something new. I'm going to ask it to write the entire chapter with the subsections without giving it, without doing it subsection by subsection. So this is the chapter and subsections. So I'll say, now write this entire chapter with the 3 subsections and only use examples from real life when it is relevant in the context. This is a very blurry description. This is actually very difficult. It has to know when is it relevant in the context. So chapter 6, and I'm going to write here. So this is actually a very good point here. It talks about addressing the shortage of mental health professionals, expanding the care, and reducing stigma. So all 3 of these are actually serious issues. At our company, Vitality, we can see that one of the biggest problems is the shortage of mental health professionals and the lack of trained primary care professionals in the healthcare field, mental health care field. And so the fact that it created this outline with the subsections and the important parts, it's actually very impressive that this is something that I would have written myself. Now let's take a look at what it's writing so far. So I ask it to write the entire chapter with the 3 subsections. So here we see that it's actually making a very small chapter compared to the previous ones. We have addressing the shortage, expanding the access to care. So we only have 2 paragraphs per subsection, whereas before I have to instruct it to write 5 paragraphs. And it is using an example in each of these actually. So it does have Crisis Text Line, which is a real organization, and telepsychiatry in rural communities. So it does seem to actually be using, and Wobot is a real life company that actually has an AI-powered chatbot for CBT. So impressively, it's using real life examples. So this way we'll write much shorter chapters, but they're accurate, straight to the point, and maybe doesn't have to be all very long chapters. In the next section, I'll try to say the same thing, but I'll write additionally that I want, let's say, 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs in each subsection. It's using several examples, so anonymity, privacy, affordability. That's good. That's good. So I'm going to ask it, now write the entire chapter. Write 3 to 5 paragraphs in each subsection and include real life examples when relevant. So one thing I've actually noticed is that it is very focused on ethics, but to the point where it would repeat itself. Each previous chapter, in every chapter and almost in every subsection, it ended the subsection with a paragraph about the ethics. So it's good that it's focused on the ethics and it was over-communicated, but in a book context, it was just repeating and using the same words and same phrases, sentences. So I actually had to delete all of that. I trimmed it from the previous answers because we have an entire section on the ethics. So here we're talking about the data privacy and security concerns. And actually, so I made a mistake here. I wrote subsection twice, but of course, ChatGPT knows it's a mistake and it can just answer the question. But using data privacy and security concerns, and it's giving me HIPAA compliance example, which is a very good example in data breach. So this is actually very good stuff. Good research done by ChatGPT. It's going to be a good book. It's been writing this chapter 7 on ethics with the 3 subsections, and it's subsection 3, but it got stuck. So it's actually second time this has happened. It's happened once before. I had to restart the whole thing. It's just doing this loading thing. I'm going to leave it for a few more minutes, but I assume I'll have to stop and then do it all over again. All right, it's clearly stuck, so I'm going to stop the generating. Whoops. Here we go. I'm going to copy this entire chapter with the 3 subsections, which is good stuff. I can replace all of this. Now let's see if we can continue. I think it's going to give me an error, but let's try. So I'll say, no, write the entire chapter, this one, with the 3 subsections. I'm not going to write the word subsection again. I'm assuming it's going to figure it out. Yes, it gave me an error. So this happened once before. When I tried to regenerate a response, the same thing. So I'm going to copy this whole text. So now the format is a little different. It doesn't have the introductory paragraph, which it had before. So I assume it actually doesn't know what we were talking about in the past, because in the past, I told it to write introductory paragraphs, and it did. But here it's different. I'm going to let it write. My concern is that it doesn't know the content, the rest of the content. And so one thing I could do is tell it, hey, we're writing this book. This is the outline. We're in chapter 8 now. But now I told it to write 3 to 5 paragraphs with examples for each subsection. So it's doing paragraphs as I wrote it. I don't know if we will do the examples. Let's see what it comes up with. It created exactly 3 paragraphs. The role of human therapist in AI-assisted future. No real-life examples. Here it does incorporate examples into the actual paragraphs, which I like, that it didn't just do the examples like before. But here we have one example of this is AI-powered sentiment analysis to better understand clients' emotion, which is a very good example because actually GPT-4 does sentiment analysis. And it's sticking to the lowest minimum effort, which is 3 paragraphs. Okay, so we only have 2 chapters to go. I'm going to tell it that we're writing a book, actually, just so it has more context. We're writing we are. I guess it is. I'm just sitting here. We're going to keep it short, and the last chapters will be the smaller ones. Instead of doing the 5 paragraphs, we can just do 3. It's fine. I just want to finish this off now. So now I have my boilerplate template. I can just copy paste and then put in the different chapters of the book. So I said, we're writing a book, this is the title, and now you're writing the chapter 9. And I want 3 paragraphs and examples from real world when relevant. One important thing is this is an AI written book. So I need to put in a big disclaimer at the front of the book to say this was written by AI, be transparent. I edited it, but this should be not taken as seriously as a human research and written book. So I'm going to ask GPT to also write a disclaimer, and I'm going to fact check all of the studies that we're talking about. I know Wobot is a real company. I just want to make sure that the study is real that it's talking about. And I'm going to add chapter 11, which will be basically I'm going to pitch my company because that's what we're doing. We're applying AI to diagnose and treat mental health problems. And so we can just include a little self-promotion at the end of the book. Why not? Okay, so it wrote chapter 9 with the 3 subsections, but again, it looks like it's stuck. So these ones have 3 paragraphs. This one's supposed to have 3 as well, but it kind of got stuck halfway through the middle, unfortunately. Again, not working perfectly. We'll have to stop generating and then restart and do all of that again, probably. So I'm going to use what we have and make sure that the cutoff is in a place where it kind of makes sense. Therapy resources. All right, we can just stop it there. Not ideal, but it's okay. So now I'm going to copy paste the same text that I used at the beginning. Actually, where I told it that we're writing a book. So in total, we have 8,700 words. So I guess we're going to have close to 10,000 words on the entire book. It's 27 pages of this document. Not bad. Of course, I could ask it to write more words and more paragraphs and just have it bigger overall, but as an experiment, this will do. All right, so it looks like it got stuck again, but it tends to get stuck on the very end, which is good, at least. So we have most of the content, if not all of it. But I'll have to start a new conversation. I'm going to copy paste all of this stuff. So we have most of it. It wrote 2.5 paragraphs. Is it? So we need to finish this one because this sentence doesn't make sense. But it has the finalizing sentence at least. And so now I'm going to copy paste. I'm going to stop generating because it's stuck. I'm going to copy paste this thing and ask to write the final chapter, which is a pitch for Vitality Therapeutics. Why not? So now I write the last chapter, which is pitch for my company, blah, blah, and I put in the information about the company and all of that. So let's see what it comes up with. The final bit of the book. Visionary CEO. Well, thank you very much. This is a good subtitle. I should maybe use this in my pitch deck. So it's writing a really good pitch for the company. I might use some of this when I talk to investors. I think it's actually going to be a copy for our website. Transforming lives one diagnosis at a time. I'm going to keep all of that and just delete the word about me being a visionary CEO. We'll do that. Sounds good. And at the end, I'll just include the website, which is feelingvitality.com. Paragraphs of the book to conclude everything. All right, so this is the last paragraphs of the book. I'll copy paste it to the very end. I want to be transparent and do this with integrity, so I'm going to write a disclaimer and then describe how the book was written. Okay, now write this section. Now write the section called how this book was written and describe how I used ChatGPT to write this entire book with my prompts, and I have edited to the best of my abilities. So we'll do a legal disclaimer, but first I'm going to ask you to describe it in kind of layman's terms of how this was written so everybody knows. It's kind of using very big words, groundbreaking collaboration. I just asked you to write a book and it did. It's also being a little self-flattering. Not only fulfilled the initial requirement, but also brought new perspectives. All right, chill out, GPT. And I'll add, yes, even this section was written by AI. It's true. Okay, so now I want a legal disclaimer. Please write a very good legal disclaimer. I hope somebody else is not going to use another AI to sue me. This is good. We're not providing medical advice. Yeah, so first we'll do how the book is written so people know this is all about AI. We actually don't need this anymore. And then I'll write the legal disclaimer. No direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damage resulting from the use, misuse, or reliance upon information provided in this book. Yep, sounds about right. The reader is solely responsible for verifying the accuracy of any information. Yes. By reading, you agree to the disclaimer. Okay. All right, so this is the entire book, 33 pages and 10,000 words. I am just gonna edit it, the formatting, and then we're gonna take a look at creating the cover art with Dolly, and then we're gonna